Today, I want to welcome Robert Siciliano. He is the co-founder of Protect Now. They are a prominent security firm. He's a prominent security expert, and he champions security appreciation over mere security awareness as the key to building the strategic human firewall. That sounds interesting. If you're in business, you are a threat. It doesn't, you have a threat. It doesn't matter the size that you are. If you look at the statistics, small businesses are the subject of cyber attacks way more than the large businesses. And so if you have a business, this is something to pay attention to. Robert, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, let's start there. I mean, I think there's a misunderstanding of who's who's under attack and who needs to be on guard. And I think a lot of small businesses think nobody cares about me, nobody's going to hack into me. What's been your experience?
Everybody, small, large, medium, whatever, every human wants to believe that they're not going to be targeted under attack. We as humans fundamentally do not actually believe in security. Like security goes against our core beliefs. And so if you are running a small business, you would just much rather think that these things can't or won't happen to me. Like denial is something that we function in on a pretty regular basis that allows us to deal with all of the anxiety and stress and threats that we encounter pretty much all day, every day. Denial is there to kind of insulate us from having to think about, bad actors targeting and choosing us.
Well, I think there's a bit of a mentality, it's kind of like the bear scenario. You don't have to run faster than the bear, just faster than the guy next to you who's also running from the bear. And I think a lot of business owners just think, I'm too small to matter. The hackers are out there, they're going for the Walmarts, the Targets, the big companies, and I'm not even on their radar.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
so
that's a
wrong.
common, what's that?
That's so wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, their perspective is wrong, is my point. And sorry for interrupting. So, like, I just got done speaking to a number of small businesses over the fall, it was my busy season. And one after the other, people coming up to me, companies that are doing, between, 500,000 and 10, 15 million a year. Okay. So small businesses, right? And over and over again, I kept hearing like, yeah, so one of our vendors, they must have got hacked because every month, like clockwork, we were getting their invoices from their actual email to pay the bills. And every month we pay our vendors, we paid the bills. And after like 3 or 4 months, we get, phone calls and emails and letters from the vendors saying, hey, how come you haven't paid us in 3 or 4 months? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, we've been paying you month after month. And like, no, we haven't received anything because the vendor's email was compromised and bad guys were inside the actual communications, inside the email, and sending invoices with banking information that benefited the criminal organization. And I just see
Hmm.
that over and over and over again because we're all using the same passcodes across multiple accounts. We're not using two-factor authentication. Like we're not doing all the basic things that are required, digital literacy in regards to cyber hygiene that are necessary and fundamental to make sure that you're not paying the bad guy for invoices that, are benefiting the bad guy. Like nobody is clued into that the way that they should. They think that security is somebody else's responsibility, that they're not going to be targeted. Well, you got a pulse, you got a bank account, you're targeted.
Hmm. And it's very fascinating. And I mean, everything I've seen, I mean, I've actually sat in the room with a major insurance carrier, talking with one of their brokers and listened to some of the stories, and it just blew my mind away. I mean, I've heard things as small as a simple food truck being a victim of a cybersecurity attack.
Yeah. So there have been 175 billion records compromised in the past 15, 20 years, meaning like names, addresses, phone numbers, personal identifying information, social security numbers, usernames, passcodes. Of the 175 billion records compromised in the past 15 to 20 years, about 15 billion of those records are in fact passwords, right? So what does that mean? It means that like statistically about 94% of the passwords that are out there that are on the dark web that are exposed from all the data breaches, you can see when you kind of sort through them that they're all like the same passcodes. Like we're all using like, the name of our kids with a few extra characters. We're using 1 2 3 4 5 6. We're using the word QWERTY, which is keystrokes across the keyboard. We're using, password and password one, or we're just using the same passcode that we developed across 10 different accounts. And any one of those accounts gets compromised. Well, the bad guys aren't hacking like everybody thinks, or at least not as often as they used to. What they're doing today is they're just logging in. And once they log into your accounts, they own you, especially if they log into your email. They log into your email, they can reset the passcode on all your critical accounts.
Yeah. Yeah. And years ago, of course, the big scandal was Hillary Clinton having her emails hacked. And the story I remember hearing about it, it wasn't that he was using some advanced algorithm. He guessed it. And it was based off something that you were talking about. It was some name or date or something that was personal to her. And that's how a hacker hacked into the Secretary of State's web email.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways in which they can get in, but that doesn't mean that we throw our hands up in the air and go, oh, they're going to get in. If they want to get in, they can get in. There's nothing I can do. That's not that we call that a fatalistic attitude towards security, and that's not effective. Fatalism is not effective anywhere in the course of life. Just giving up. In life and in business. But there's a number of things, layers of protection that you can put in place to become a tougher target, to become hardened. So, for example, I ask my audiences when I get in front of a live group, I ask them a lot of qualifying questions also to get the conversation going, because my programs and presentations are a dialogue versus like a monologue. I'm not talking at them. We're having a conversation. And in that conversation, I kind of raised my hand because I know what my answer is going to be. And I asked them, like, how many of you are using a different passcode across each account? And if I get 15% of the room to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm using a different passcode, that's a lot, which means that, 80+% are using the same passcode. In the same breath, how many are using two-factor authentication? If I get 15 to 20% of the room, again, that's a lot. So 80% of the general public is not using two-factor and they're using the same passcode. And then, how many are using a password manager? If I get 10% of the room, that's a lot. So these basic, 101 risk reduction strategies, two-factor, change up your passcodes, password manager, are not being considered because human beings, first and foremost, we don't want to think that bad things can happen to us. And that all boils down to our biology, right? So biology actually plays a huge role in security, right? My philosophy is and has always been that all security is personal. And what that basically means is that it all starts with you, with your physical being, preventing violence and then protecting your identity, which doesn't get more personal than that. But we resist security because we are what is called, as humans, an interdependent species. And what that means is we depend on each other for our survival, for our procreation, right? And as an interdependent species, the basis of that means that we need to trust each other. Trust is our foundation. Without trust, like we would be afraid and never get with anybody, so to speak. You know what I mean? So as social creatures, we require that we trust each other. And that means that we don't necessarily think about or want to think about or believe that there are bad actors or bad people out there that mean to do me harm. So instead of like recognizing that that's a possibility, we basically like just kind of function in a level of denial, like, we've discussed. And that is problematic because that resistance to security prevents us from just doing these basic things. And that I see as the biggest problem with not just small businesses, the employees at these businesses, and in our own personal security at home. So when I ask those questions, it's not just at work, it's at home too. And if security was presented at work as, okay, how this affects you as an individual personally, I think employees would do a more effective job at protecting their data at work when they understand how to protect their data at home, their own identities, their credit, their bank accounts, their information.
Yeah. I'm curious, how did you, I mean, obviously you're very passionate about this. How did you get into this?
Yeah, my path is unlike most. So all the time, how did you get into talking about cybersecurity? You former law enforcement, FBI, Secret Service, military. Like, what's your background, man? I'm like, I'm a kid from the streets of Boston. Okay. And I just saw stuff and I understood. It just made sense to me early on what look at I was in downtown Boston at the age of 12. My dad let my brother and I go into town to do some shopping for Michael's birthday. And like at 12 years old, we could do that back then, which is a long time ago. As soon as we got off the train, five kids jumped us and mugged me and took my money. I was unprepared for that. Okay. And I learned when I went home and said, Dad, like what, he's like, oh, all right, let's sit you down. Let's discuss. And I learned that like those boys were the lion or the lions or the wolves. And I was the rabbit or the gazelle. Right. And I was like, all right. Right. And from that point on, I began to see the world a little bit differently. But then when I was 13, I met a girl like at summer camp and she liked me and I liked her, like my first crush. And one day we get off the bus after camp, and we're sitting on our front stairs and we're having a conversation. And I see her start to get upset. And I was like, what's wrong? And she said, I think you should know that my mother's boyfriend raped me. Now, this is 46 years ago. I was just 13 years old. And we didn't know about sex back then. That just wasn't a thing. And so I go home and I say, Dad, like, what is rape? And I learned about the birds and the bees and forcible rape in the exact same conversation.
Oh, wow.
And so that had a profound effect in the way I viewed the world, those two situations. And so from that point on, like, that was my focus. In 1995, I had a small business teaching personal protection to real estate agents who are murdered because they're, soccer moms and NASCAR dads that have no formal security training in open houses and basements. And so I've been teaching realtor safety for, 30 years. Personal security has always been my thing. And I had a small mail order business at the time selling product, like, videos on self-defense and everything, pepper sprays. And I had my first computer was an IBM PS1 Consultant, which is the make and model, with Windows 3.0 and 150 megabyte hard drive. And I had a dial-up connection to AOL, and I had the ability to accept credit cards, which meant like I used my computer as the point of sale terminal. And I got hacked in 1995. And what that meant was I lost thousands and thousands of dollars through credit card fraud. And I did not know like what that was about. Like that was all brand new. Like I had never heard of anything like that before. For me, security, personal security was physical security. It was protecting yourself from physical violence, from muggers and thieves, burglars. But then to be stolen over the internet was a brand new thing. And I was upset, but I was intrigued. Like how'd they do that? Like I wanted to understand. Because if they could do that to me, they could do that to anybody. Like they made thousands of dollars off my back virtually. And virtually, the word virtually wasn't even a thing. It was the internet. It was dial-up. It was AOL. The internet was AOL. And so from that point on, that became my focus. I mean, personal security was my focus and still is. But personal security then and still today means all security is personal. Starts with your physical being, but then of course it's your identity, it's your data, it's your dollars, it's your passwords. And I've been presenting information like that then and today, because that's really where we should be coming from when it comes to protecting everything. Ourselves, our families, our businesses starts with you. Personal responsibility, personal security, and all of that. So that's where I come from. And I saw as it grew in the late 90s, identity theft became a thing. And then by the early 2000s, I started to see those data breaches left and right all over the place. And now, 175 billion records, and here we are. And people say all the time, and I'll just give me 1 second. People say all the time, like Robert, these hackers, they're so sophisticated. If they could just take what they know and they could cure cancer. And I'm like, yeah, no, because what I've learned in 30 plus years is that 97% of the people that you will ever meet, 97% are worthy of your trust. They're good people. They may lie occasionally, they may deceive, but they're good people with good intentions. But there's about 2 to 3% of the world's population, and you can look all this up and figure it out, or I can guide you. About 2 to 3% are sociopaths and psychopaths, hardcore narcissists. No empathy, no sympathy, no guilt, no remorse. They are the lions, we are the gazelle. And they're not going to cure cancer because they don't care about curing cancer. They care
Yeah.
about capitalizing on us, preying upon us. And that has not changed. It's only gotten worse.
It's interesting. You mentioned dial-up a couple minutes ago. I don't know if you know who Jason Calacanis is. He's one of the members of the All In podcast. It's one of the largest podcasts. He grew up in New York City, and he said that back in it was either 1987 or 88, he called the New York Public Library and said, "Hey, I'm from IT. Can you give me the dial-up number?" And they gave him a dial-up number that had virtually no security. And so he hacked into the New York City Library system all the way back in 88, 87 with a dial-up modem.
Yeah. The telephone still today is being used to look at. We are all good people and we respect authority. And somebody on the other end of the line poses as like most people's first reaction is, I want to and need to give the benefit of the doubt. I trust by default. And the phone calls I receive and the emails I get and the text message I receive, I pretty much want to and need to trust that. Therefore, if you say you're IT, okay, you're IT. Like that hasn't changed then or now. Back in 2023, 2, Uber got hacked. Uber, massive technology company. An employee gets a text message from someone saying that they were IT and needed his password. He gave up the password. Is he stupid? Is he gullible? Is he naive? No. He's human. He's normal. It's what people do. We're good people. We just want to help. We just want to do our job. And that's most people. That's 97% of us, preyed upon by 3%.
Let's talk about a little bit about the password loggers. So I mean I use one and I think they're built into the iPhone, but I'm shocked that today in 2026 it's that so few people are using those. And I'm shocked that companies don't have that as mandatory that you will use here's the company password logger, use it.
Yeah, password management is still a nightmare. Two-factor authentication really is the best solution that we currently have to solve the problem of password using the same passcode more than once. Two-factor authentication makes that ubiquitous passcode useless to the thief because the bad guy needs to have your mobile phone in their possession, which they don't. Other than that, pass keys are the direction everything is going. But pass keys, which recognize your device, that recognize your IP address, might recognize like your device's IMEI or your device reputation and so on, and obviously along with your passwords and a number of other factors, right? It looks for behavior. I mean, the pass keys really are the direction that everything is going. But we're still a ways away from that being fully ubiquitous and fully adopted. In the meantime, we're stuck with like recognizing the basics. We don't do that well. And it's almost as if down the road, it's going to have to be done for us as like kind of Google has pretty much implemented two-factor authentication, whether you want to or not. Apple pretty much has implemented two-factor authentication almost in a way where they kind of trick you into enabling it. Not unethically, but like because they just know what's good for you. That's kind of the direction that things kind of have to go. Like we kind of have to force feed the public security, not unlike, the seatbelt. Look at most of us would not be wearing a seatbelt today if the car didn't stop dinging at us because that's just the way we are. I know that like half the country has a law in place that says if you're seen driving without a seatbelt, you get a ticket. You get pulled over. Other half of the country has laws saying if you get pulled over and don't have a seatbelt on, you're going to get a ticket. Only New
So
Hampshire. Go ahead.
yes, let me ask this. Why is it companies are not forcing keep, whether it's passkey or whatever the system is. I forgot some of the major ones, but basically the password loggers. Why aren't companies just making that standard practice?
So the unfortunate problem here is that most people lack a significant level of digital literacy. Okay, we know how to use our hardware and our software to the point that we need to or want to, so that we can watch a video on TikTok or post an update on Facebook. Like, we don't really take the time and effort to figure out our hardware and how our software works. And so a lot of security is based on, it's risk management from the organization first, but it's also, does it pass the grandmother test? Meaning, like, if your grandmother can't do it, then what's going to happen as a result of this is their customer service inquiries are going to skyrocket. They're going to go up really quick because now, like, we're force feeding security. It ultimately means that we have to hold people's hands to get to where they need to go in order to access their systems or our product or service. So we've got to make it relatively easy for them to access our technology, our service, so we can keep getting paid every month with whatever it is our service is in order for them to, log in. So it can't be too difficult. My concern there is that security is not fully enforced right now because it's not so understood. But down the road, with AI and deep fakes and voice clones, I think it's going to get to a point where, like, there's going to be so many breaches, there's going to be so many vulnerabilities because humans are getting hacked left and right versus networks are getting hacked, humans are getting hacked, that companies and organizations and government agencies are going to have to tighten things up so much that we're not going to be able to function the way we want to online. And it's going to stifle things a lot.
Yeah. Well, so as we wrap up, real quick, what are three things that any business owner should start doing today for cybersecurity?
Number one, recognize that this is an actual real profession. I applied for a loan through a bank not too long ago, and they'd asked, like, what's your profession? Cybersecurity wasn't even a consideration. Librarian, truck driver, cybersecurity was nowhere. Technology, computer programmer, none of that stuff was there. It's not even recognized as a profession, and it should be. And there are professionals out there that you hire, much like an HVAC guy or a plumber or, an electrician, that, like, these white collar guys and gals, they will make sure that your network is tight. They will do, penetration testing. They'll do a vulnerability test to find out if your hardware or software needs updates or upgrades, additional hardware, additional software, additional monitoring to make sure that you're properly protected. So we might call them a virtual chief information security officer or a fractional CISO or, or a managed service provider, an MSP. Like, you hire these companies to come in to make sure your network is protected, right? And it's an investment. Like any other aspect of your business, it's an investment. Cybersecurity insurance should be a result of that vulnerability testing because, things happen. And once you tighten up your network the way it should be, look, you can do it yourself all day long, but I mean, what do you really know? Have a professional come in, and once they tighten things up, then you incorporate cybersecurity insurance. And then from there, depending on the size and scope of your organization, there should be ongoing security awareness training, even if it's once every 6 months, not just once a year, not just to keep compliant, but there should be a level of security awareness training that you understand as the company officer, as a leader, as leadership, what security is and isn't. It's not about paranoia. It's about recognizing risk and taking charge and taking control and understanding password management and two-factor authentication like it means something and it matters to you. And if it means something and matters to you in your personal life, then it will in your business life. And then it will ultimately, because of your own understanding and philosophy of it and its importance to you, to your employees. And once you engage in that security awareness training effectively, regularly, things change. Your employees, like, they set up a little taller. They recognize things a little bit more. They become that much more aware of everything. It's not just security. It elevates you. security is an important thing in our lives. At the base of the triangle of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, right? It's your physiological needs. It's eating and sleeping and drinking, and right above that is safety, security, stability, structure, and protection. And everything after that, love and belongingness, everything, all comes that much more easier once you get the foundation in order.
All right. Well, excellent. Well, hey, thanks for sharing that. How can people reach you?
I am Googleable, Robert Siciliano, if you can spell it, Siciliano. And of course, my website is protectnowllc.com, protectnowllc.com.
Thanks for coming on Layers and Legacies.
Thank you so much.